Look at this piece of junk. This was the very first piece of shop furniture that I ever built. I gave it the highly sought-after glue squeeze-out finish, some decorative nails through the drawer face, and a drawer that operates smooth as butter. Although I think it was the 2x4 hinges and the live-edge OSB cabinet doors that truly set it apart. But really, there's just a lot of wasted space here. And I built it on a moving dolly, so the casters don't even lock, and that can get pretty annoying when I'm trying to use my planer. It's worked for years, but I really think it's time to make something better. Something that has much better storage, functions easier, and has the right amount of unnecessary walnut. And this is what I came up with. To make better use of storage, I did away with the cabinet and went with a set of 5 drawers. 3 slim drawers, and 2 deeper ones for some larger items. The cart would be mobile with casters that can lock both the swiveling as well as the wheels to firmly secure it in place. But the best thing about this little cart is that the entire thing can be made from just 2 sheets of plywood. Just 2 sheets. It's the 2-sheet tool seat. So, that's what we'll be building today. Let's get to it. First, my local big box store used a rusty hatchet to break down the 2 plywood sheets so that I could fit them into my vehicle. After getting them home and down into the shop, I could then start to cut out all the pieces. Despite it being bigger and heavier, I started with the 3/4 inch sheet, which turned out to be the easiest of the 2 to break down. And according to my personal trainer and my rigorous workout regime, I jot down the only 2 parts of me that are still out of shape. And then I finished cutting out the rest of the pieces by breaking down the 1/2 inch sheet. Eventually I had everything cut to size, sorted, and ready for assembly. Because I'm strange, I chose to start by putting the drawers together first. And to do this, I'm just using some very basic construction. Nothing fancy here at all. Just some butt joints with a little bit of glue and some brads to hold things in place so I can keep moving. And the bottom goes on in the same fashion. A thin bead of glue goes around the outer frame. I line it up just right, and then I go crazy with the nail gun. Any slight overhangs get trimmed off with the router, and then I can give each drawer box a good sanding. Now to put together the carcass, I decided to use pocket hole joinery because it's quick, easy, and more than strong enough for this little cart. I drilled a bunch of holes along the top and the bottom edges of the sides, and then all around the back panel. And to keep the pieces from sliding out of alignment as I screw them together, I like to securely clamp them in place beforehand. I run a bead of glue down the edge, line it up just right, tighten things down on the clamps, and then I go ahead and drive in the screws. Once the sides and back are together, I can tip the whole thing up onto the bottom. I give it some taparoos to line it up just right, throw on some clamps, and then send it home with some screws. At this point, I can verify that I measured correctly and left enough room for the drawer slides. With that looking good, I started to install the rails on each of the drawer boxes. To do this, I just draw a guideline down the sides, and then I spot that line through the mounting hole locations of the rail. Make a starting hole for the screws, and then secure it into place. And I do that 10 times over until all the rails are mounted. Next step was to mount the slides into the carcass. I clamped on a drawer slide jig and then used a little block of 3/4 inch plywood to space it back just enough so that the drawer face can be inset. And once I had it in the right position, I could drive in the screws. Then with all the slides mounted, I could put the drawer boxes in and make sure they all fit. Now each of the drawer faces needed to be shaved down just a bit so that they'd have some clearance once they've been mounted. So I did that on the table saw and at the miter saw. I used some playing cards to equally space out each face on the front of the drawers. Clamped it in place, and then mounted it with screws from behind. Now I could go ahead and fasten on the top. I just ran a bead of glue around the carcass, dropped it down, clamped it in place, and then drove in all the screws. And any excess was trimmed off with the router. Now to make this thing mobile. I wanted to get some decent casters so that this thing would roll smoothly, but also some that could be locked and would keep it from moving around while I'm using the tool that sits on top. But because I'm a genius, I mounted the bottom drawer just a touch too low. So as an easy fix, I counterbored the caster mount holes just a bit to make room for the bolts. Then I could drill out all the holes, mount each one of the casters, and give myself a hernia while lifting it down. Making sure all the drawers fit with the faces attached. And now I can get to work making some pulls. I borrowed my neighbor's walnut cutting board and made some drawer pulls that match the ones I have on my other shop furniture. By tilting the table saw blade and by alternating the fence on either side, I cut out each of the pulls and then trimmed them to size at the miter saw. Then by using the cabinet hardware jig from True Position Tools, I could very quickly and consistently mark out all the locations of where I needed to drill for my pulls. This jig is well built, easy to use, and works wonderfully. I'll leave a link to it in the video description if you want to check it out for yourself. So then I drilled some tiny pilot holes at the locations, glued on each of the drawer pulls, and then reinforced them with some flathead screws. Last step was to pretty things up a bit by adding some Danish oil. This will give it a bit of protection as well as make my hands smell good, so it's a good thing all around. And here it is. Turned out great, and it rolls around so smoothly. There is so much storage in this cart, I'm not going to know what to do with it all. I can easily fit all my He-Man action figures into the bottom two drawers, and for the rest, I'll just fill them with Fig Newtons and juice boxes. Alright, time for hernia number 2. And out with the old, and in with the new. Perfect. It's so nice having drawers that operate smoothly. What a difference. Now I get to spend the next hour organizing the shop and filling this thing up. Well, I couldn't be happier with how it turned out. And to think that I made it from just 2 sheets of plywood is awesome. Hey, if you'd like to build this for yourself, I'll have detailed step-by-step plans available on my website over at fishersshoponline.com. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Well, crap, I popped through there. Nuts. Oh, I did it on an angle. Crap. I totally forgot to drill the pocket holes on the inside of the support to hold on the surface. I'm just hoping that this will work. Oh boy. Ow! Nice. My lid's not sticking all the way through. Crap. Oh, crap. Oh, jeez. Oh boy. I'm gonna murder someone. Is the hole too small? It won't even... Oh, just barely. Nuts. No, those are bolts.